Hi, welcome back to the lecture. In this section of the lecture, I want to talk about a couple different AWS services that we use for managing the, the resources and the services that we have deployed in AWS. And the first service I want to talk about is Cloudwatch. Cloudwatch is a monitoring and messaging service that AWS makes available for us. It's a way for us to monitor the status of our AWS resources. We can use it to track the different performance metrics for things like our EC2 instances and RDS databases. We can use this to see the CPU utilization on our AWS EC2 instances, or to see how we can see the I/O requests that are being made to our databases. We can use CloudWatch to collect log messages. Resources are being utilized. Some of those resources, like RDS databases or API gateways, and so on, those resources can generate actual log messages, and those log messages can be collected by CloudWatch for our review. We can use CloudWatch to set alarms and to notify us if predefined metric thresholds are reached. So if we have something like maybe an RDS database, and if that database is getting hit by a large number of I/O requests, then we might set in some sort of alarm. Or if an EC2 instance, if the CPU utilization in the EC2 instance is higher than a desired threshold for a certain amount of time, we might want to know about that, and we can do that by setting a CloudWatch alarm. And so CloudWatch can also set and generate event messages, and these event messages can be consumed by other services to automatically remediate potential problems with our infrastructure. So the bottom line is that CloudWatch is a tool, is a service that we can use to sort of constantly monitor the health of our cloud application platform, and we can use it as a way to, in some cases, automatically fix problems that appear. The metric data that CloudWatch stores is going to be stored up to 15 months with a gradually decreasing amount of granularity. What that means is that the granularity of the data that you see in CloudWatch is going to be very finely detailed, for like the first few weeks or first month, meaning that you can see metric data for every 5 minutes. But then over time, that metric data becomes less and less granular. You won't be able to see data on a 5-minute sort of interval. It'll be data on a minute-by-minute interval, or 5-minute interval, or hourly interval. So it becomes averaged over time and less granular over time as well. And to be honest, most of the time we're generally interested in very recent CloudWatch data, and especially if we're trying to troubleshoot the performance issues with our platform. We might be concerned with the sort of long-term data more from a trend perspective, and trying to understand the, sort of like, capacity planning for our platform or something. The CloudWatch service is provided for free. There's a basic monitoring tier, which is included for most of our services. And in many cases, we have the option to select a more detailed monitoring tier. If we select the detailed monitoring tier, then we have to pay extra for that. What detailed monitoring will do is it will increase the monitoring interval from 5 minutes to 1 minute. So instead of collecting metric data, sort of taking a snapshot of our resource consumption every 5 minutes, it will take that snapshot and gather metrics every single minute. And of course, all this metric information that we get from Cloudwatch is available to us programmatically using an API. So we can pull this metric data into our own platform if we want to be able to surface it there for our staff members or even potentially for our customers. Here's an example of a dashboard that we can create within the Cloudwatch service. And the dashboard allows us to basically instrument the metric data. It's easier to see metric data presented in the form of some sort of graph, some sort of chart, versus just obviously looking at raw data numbers. And so we can use the dashboard feature within Cloudwatch to create pretty dashboards that we can then we can look at and try to quickly interpret. We can also use them for reporting purposes. And here's an example of what Cloudwatch logs look like. I mentioned that there are various services which generate logs. These are essentially small text messages that are part of a time series set of data. And these messages are collected in Cloudwatch log groups, and each message is part of a stream in a log group. And so we can use the Cloudwatch service to go and look at these messages and actually search for certain types of messages. I find that Cloudwatch logs is sort of fairly rudimentary. If I'm logging information from hundreds or thousands of different services, then trying to find information in Cloudwatch logs alone would be very cumbersome. And so generally what you'd see is companies that are taking data from Cloudwatch logs and putting them into another service like Elastic, maybe Hadoop or something else in order to do some sort of search or analysis. The last thing I'll mention about Cloudwatch is that we can use Cloudwatch for metric collection and for collecting log messages. We can also use Cloudwatch to manage events, and this is called Cloudwatch Events, or more recently they're starting to call this the Event Bridge service, and it's a really interesting service. Essentially, we can use Cloudwatch as a massive shared message bus within our platform, and most of the AWS services will send out event messages to the Cloudwatch events bus. So like, when an EC2 instance were to spin up or an S3 bucket's created or whatever, all of those different sort of transactions will generate an event message in the Cloudwatch events bus. And then we can design consumers, application services which will consume messages from that event bus and perhaps take some sort of action. Very, very cool service. The next service I want to talk about is AWS CloudTrail. And AWS CloudTrail is a managed service which will log all of the AWS API requests. And it will log those requests in a read-only database, essentially. Why would you want to log all of the API requests that are made in your account? Well, you might want to log those for tracking purposes and security purposes and compliance purposes. And a lot of companies have compliance requirements where they have to maintain a log for, of all service requests and service changes within their environment. Well, CloudTrail is that service which allows you to provide that sort of auditing and compliance. The API requests are going to be stored in a log stream called a trail. And this log data is ultimately going to be stored in an S3 bucket that you would designate. So, and one of the cool things you can do with CloudTrail is you can set up notifications. And these notifications are based upon some sort of specific API call that you specify. So, for example, you can set up a notification where CloudTrail will send you an alert anytime an EC2 instance is added or removed from your account. Very, very handy service. And it's generally a service that I've used almost with every customer and every company that I've worked with, because most companies want to have some sort of audit trail of activity within their account. AWS Config is a service, a managed service provided by AWS, which will evaluate and document the configuration of AWS resources in the account. This is somewhat similar in a way to the CloudTrail service. The CloudTrail service is maintaining a log of all the API requests that are made. The AWS Config service is maintaining and storing the configuration of your AWS resources. And it can watch for changes in those resources over time. So, for example, you might want to have sort of like a snapshot of the configuration of your resources in an AWS account. And you might want to know if somebody comes into your account and changes the configuration in some way. You can do that using AWS Config. You can also use AWS Config to audit resource configuration for compliance purposes. You might have a compliance requirements that says that all of your EBS volumes must be encrypted. And if AWS Config finds an EBS volume in your account which is not encrypted, it will send you a notification. The reports that AWS Config are going to be stored in an S3 bucket that you designate, and AWS Config can send you notifications when resource configuration changes occur. So you can think of AWS Config as another service which helps you to manage the sort of compliance requirements, and it helps you to automate some of the auditing work within your AWS account.